So, whether you're the type of entrepreneur who wants to be involved in many different businesses, I meet people like that all the time. They've got a number of brands under their umbrella, let's say, of how they're making their income streams, and they just like the idea of having multiple businesses. So if you're like that, this video is definitely for you. Or if you're a personal brand and you're kind of building that up, but it's got various things under it. Maybe you speak, maybe you've got digital products, maybe they're physical products, then you'll also get something from this video. Or lastly, maybe you're in a situation where you've got one company you're working on, but there's just many products involved underneath there, or it's got a lot of different ways that the brand can be. And I'll give you examples of what that looks like. I'm going to show you the different ways that brands structure themselves and how you can then apply it to what you're doing to either create clarity or help provide just more structure and direction to the company you're building or companies that you're building. So there's two main structures. The first one is called a branded house. That's where you have a brand like Nike, and then underneath that, they have a number of things that they do, a number of product lines, a number of events. You know, they've got Nike Run. That's its own brand in a sense. They've got Air Jordan. I mean, it's endless how many things they've really got a lot of different kind of product lines and things that they do under their belt. So you get the idea. Apple's kind of like that too. So that's one way to structure a brand. Basically, you spend time developing the top one, and then that leads into the next ones. And when I talk about them being different brands, what I mean is that they create different feelings. They hold different purposes. They are targeted at a slightly different kind of person. You know, they have their own logos. They have their own brand identities. They have their way of doing things. Like a commercial Nike might shoot for Air Jordan might be very different than what it would shoot for Nike Run, let's say, right? And so in that way, you're essentially building not just a main brand that has a way of speaking and a way of being in the world and a color palette and the type of work that it does or the kinds of product it releases, but it then releases sub-brands as part of its revenue strategy, each one of them holding more and more weight as time goes on. And the ones that I'm sure don't hold weight, they've probably, have been lost to history. An example on a more personal brand scale of this would be like Oprah, or The Rock. These are people who have their top brand, Oprah. Whatever she represents means what we think of her when we watch the show, what she's now become synonymous with, hard conversations, healing from trauma, spirituality, race politics, right? And then similar to The Rock, it's like the wrestling and the macho guy, but who's also sensitive, like all those things about him that are both authentic to those people, but make up what we understand of them as the brand. And then underneath that, he's got his tequila company. And he also has obviously his movie career, which I guess is like him, The Rock, as opposed to Dwayne Johnson, which I believe is his name, which I guess would be the personal brand in a sense. But The Rock is really The Rock is really his personal brand, I would say. But his name holds weight too. Similarly with Oprah, she's got the OWN network. So the way that this kind of works is like they tap into their big idea over time, and then they release things. Maybe they'll do an event. She's got Super Soul Sunday. That's the name of her podcast, right? So this is another example of a branded house. Now, the second option that you have, I got to make that you remember what it says, hopefully, is the house of brands. So in this scenario, the top company does very little but hold the brands. For instance, Comcast. Go back here. Obviously, probably you might have heard of Comcast, but they own a lot of companies. They own NBC and Universal, and I think obviously CNBC and Sci-Fi, however you spell that, and Bravo. But most people don't know. These are all networks, if you don't know that. But anyway, most people don't necessarily know who Comcast is. Now, they have a brand in and of themselves, I guess, but it's not very public facing. It's not something that most people, they're not asking anyone to buy into what Comcast is. On some level they are, but they know their market. It's other distributors, other networks, and other distribution. So they're speaking direct to them. It's very B2B. They're buying them, and then Comcast holds all of those brands, all of this meaning, all of whatever these things are. They're not necessarily related. These are related, but like Universal and Bravo don't have a relationship in the same way that like a Nike Air Jordan and Nike Run have a relationship. They hold mutual meaning because they're both associated with Nike. Whereas this house of brands they don't necessarily need their parent brand to continue to have meaning to their other brands. For instance, if there was no Apple, would we care about the iPhone anymore? Like if, for instance, Apple was just like, oh, we're selling to Comcast, now we're Comcast. Comcast owns the iPhone and everything else. I don't know if they'd be able to survive that. So those are really the main two options when it comes to how to think about branding in your organization. Are you, or as a person, is the top brand the one that's taking more of the attention on the brand building, and then everything else is an offshoot? Like I was on a call today with this app that this guy is building, or this team is building, and they said, they are still attached to their main brand because that's what's built it so far, but they want to do other things. They're part of what they're offering is not just the app. It's like other extensions and other products that people can buy and other things. So that's more of like a Nike example in that regard, right? So it works for personal brands and for business brands. I think it's an area where people get somewhat confused. So just quickly at the end of this video, I'll quickly tell you what my structure is. And I have more of the house of brands. So I have like my main corp that's called Mountaintop Inc. And then that isn't public facing really, except for the fact that my Instagram it still is. It's at MNTNTP. Most people don't know that stands for Mountaintop, which is fine, but that's what it was from a while ago. And then because I had an attachment to it, that's what I ended up naming the corp that like takes all of my income streams. And then underneath that, I've got a production company called Monday Media, where we do like videos and other elements of brand storytelling. We'll work with like Estee Lauder and work with Bacardi and stuff. So like it's more brands that already have storytelling, but they want to just keep it going. They want to tell more docs. They want to do more things. They want to just expand the way that they're talking about their brand. And then I've got Brand Breakthrough, which is one of my favorite things because it helps me talk to other entrepreneurs, which is like my favorite thing. And I love talking about their business and kind of helping out on that. So that's what that is, mostly one-to-one consulting. And I just kind of help them through thinking about their marketing strategy, their ad strategy. And together we come up with ideally something that's optimized for both profit and revenue and time, because part of a big way that I make business decisions is like, how much time is it going to take me, and what is the best use of time to money ratio and all those things, just optimizing that out. So I highly consider it. So anyway, so I got Brand Breakthrough, and then I also have my personal brand, which is like, that brings me money through, I made a film 10 years ago, so there's royalties there, and there's like speaking gigs come up, right? And that feeds into these other things, of course, because my personal brand, people might come to me and then they're like, oh, you're a brand strategist, we need this video series, or like, oh, like we want to talk about our ad strategy or whatever. So in many ways, this helps me build the other things, but it is still in of itself kind of has a separate revenue model. So that's a bit about how I structure, but I talk to people and who are doing various different things and who want to put together stuff in just different ways, whichever works best for the business and the brand strategy. So hopefully this helped. And if you want to talk more about your brand, feel free to hit the link below and book a call with me and we can talk about it.
Oh, and I guess the last one would be, for instance, Target. I mean, Target may have sub-brands, but mostly it's just Target. And then all the other brands are either other brands there, because they just represent kind of a wholesale situation that they don't own, except for the fact that they sell the stuff. But mostly you're just thinking of just them. So that's one last structure to a brand too. It's just like the top name and they don't really do any other sub-brands. You know, the clothes that they sell or the products that they have are just like a lot of softwares, you'd say, you know, they're just riding on the one sort of name, which is also valid. So it's like, you know, LimeWire, if anyone remembers that download software, or like Frame.io, which is a software I use at the agency where you put in comments. You can put in direct timestamp comments into a video, which is super helpful from client communications and team communications and everything. So, but they don't have other things associated. It's just Frame.io, that's the product. They've got some packages, but they're not named anything really branded. They're probably like, you know, a basic, an elite, and like a premium or something. So I just wanted to add that because that is one last option that I forgot to cover.